There's no question whatsoever he can send in the military to protect ICE agents as they're carrying out their operations.
You know, you had mentioned the Marine Corps coming in to support. Do you think that was the right call?
I do. I had heard Biden had open borders and Biden was doing things to actually make it easier. And you hear it and you say, okay, well, I literally witnessed it firsthand. They were touring us around and they would show us this pole, and they said, these poles all used to have cameras on them. The Biden administration ordered them to come down.
So I just saw something pop up too. Hobbs vetoed a bill. I'm not allowing China to own property here in Arizona.
Yeah.
She vetoed that.
She's actually vetoed 5 of those bills.
Most people who pay attention to politics, they pay attention to federal politics.
Right.
I lived in this state most of my life, and I still don't know a whole lot about how the politics even in Arizona works, just because it's not on TV, it's not in front of your face every day.
Right.
So maybe that's something we can start with and talk a little bit about. I mean, but research on you know, you're the Arizona State Senate Majority Leader.
Senate President.
Senate President,
Yep.
okay. That seems pretty significant. There's 30 senators from what I understand.
Yep.
So you're the top guy you're the top in the majority.
Right.
And then now you're running for Attorney General of Arizona. So let's just real quickly dive into that real quick, and then we'll get into some hot topics.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was elected to the legislature back in 2012, was in the House for a while. I've served as Majority Leader, Commerce Chairman, Judiciary Chairman, Rules Chairman, been on the Appropriations Committee, Ethics, ran for senator, been in the Senate, now I'm the Senate President. I'm not termed out, but it's really easy to take for granted your Attorney General. Sometimes people don't think much about the Attorney General until you get a really bad Attorney General, which is what we have right now. And so a bunch of people came to me and said, Warren, you really ought to think about running. These are former judges, lawyers, people that have worked at the Attorney General's office, just saying, you got to save the Attorney General's office. It's a disaster. So that kind of piqued my interest, looked into it, and ended up, pulling the trigger and running.
So is it kind of like the top lawyer of the state?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It's the top prosecutor of the state.
Okay.
The office has about 400. It's at one time at least, it was the largest law office. You got bigger firms now, but about 400 attorneys at the office, and anything from you've got civil rights to crime, criminal, constitutional challenges. But really, my focus is, and my passion, and one reason I'm running, because our current Attorney General, if you look into her and kind of her past and just what she's passionate about, and you'll see this from elected officials, they go with their passion, of course. That's what they focus on. She's really a environmental radical activist. I mean, that's like in her heart, that's who she is. And you kind of see that thread in what she's doing, that kind of theme, if you will. For me, it's defend the Constitution and our laws, fight crime, and eliminate government corruption. Those should be the top things. And in law enforcement and government, you never have enough resources. So it really is important that your priorities it's all about your priorities. Mm-hmm. So those would be my priorities going into it. She's been, soft on crime. And again, she's really just focused on kind of environmental stuff is kind of her thing. And so,
Democrat.
Yeah.
It's a political position, right?
Oh, very. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a partisan position.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when she was on the Corporation Commission, right? Wasn't she a Republican at one time?
So she was a Republican. She switched to Democrat. Currently, there's really only 3 people in this race, myself included. I'm the only person who's always been a Republican, always been conservative. So she changed her office. I'm running against, my opponent in the primary, changed his office. I've got a 13-year proven record at the legislature, very conservative record. But that's kind of the lay of the land. It's a little unusual. You usually see a lot more candidates in these races. But I think a couple things are at play. I think politics right now is like at an all-time toxicity level. I mean, I remember I got in 13 years ago, and I thought, I got elected, I thought, man, it can't get any more toxic than it. And then the rise of social media, like social media really pushes everything over the top. But it's also too, I think we've came in with a really strong campaign, and I think people that were looking at the race said, and a lot of them just said, hey, I was thinking about running, but I'm going to support you, and so it's been good.
How many year term?
How many year term is the AG's race? It's 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah. Legislature's 2 year term. Any of the statewide offices, so AG, governor, secretary of state, those are all 4 year terms. But the legislative seats, even the Senate seats, they don't do it like the federal level. Statewide is different. They're all 2 year terms. 30 districts across the state, cover every square inch of the state. I'm from District 14. That's Gilbert, basically just Gilbert area. So,
well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on right now with these riots. This is wild, and so I have a lot of thoughts. But I'll just let you start what you think overall is going on and how you think the whole landscape is shaking out.
Yeah, no, this is one of the biggest reasons people elected Donald Trump to be president was because he is tough on crime, and he's going to keep America safe, and he promised to close the border. So, and I can talk more about that. But as far as the rioting goes, it's some of it's paid. Not it's. In fact, people say very little of it is organic. Most of it's organized or paid. And this is, they're really helping the Republican cause because this is an 80-20 people. I mean, 80-20 issue, not people, 80-20 issue. Mm-hmm. People want to be safe. And it's interesting because the media started off calling these protests. It's rioting. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you said rioting. When you get to criminal damage, property damage, that's rioting. And so it was interesting to see how the media was painting it as most, peaceful, and then people really pushed back. And now Fox News is calling them riots. It's kind of riots everywhere, which is what they are.
It feels organized. Yeah. Like you said. Totally. And it's like out of the Democrat playbook, I feel like.
I would almost, riot, I would almost use the word insurrection. You have paid people, but you have non-legal citizens waving other countries' flags and firebombing stuff. I don't know. To me, that seems even more than a riot. That is. I mean, you think January 6th was an insurrection? Like this is.
Yeah.
In my mind, anyway. I don't know.
No, totally. And what's the most bizarre is to watch the Democrat leadership like double down in support of these folks. I mean, it's absolutely insane. They're literally siding with people who are causing property damage, committing crimes, throwing rocks through windows of law enforcement. Even our own governor recently signed on to a letter with other governors that said Trump went too far by calling up the National Guard and the military. Newsom should have called in the National Guard immediately. Mm-hmm. So thank goodness President Trump did it. And then the military, who wouldn't want the military? Of course, who in law enforcement wouldn't want the military to be there to help back you up in those kind of situations where you're overwhelmed by these mobs. So President Trump has the support of the public on what he's doing. And my message here in Arizona is what I've been saying is that the governor and the AG right now, they're taking a posture of siding with these rioters. If any of these protests that we're seeing here in Arizona elevate to rioting, the governor should immediately have DPS there. She should call up the National Guard, and our AG should be very forcefully prosecuting any felonies.
She feels weak to me. I don't know her personally, and I don't mean this to be a personal attack on her, but she just doesn't feel like she's very decisive or very. She just feels like she's a wishy-washy type of politician.
Well, she's a social worker.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. No. She's definitely has played. She's not been a proactive governor. She's been very reactive. She's, her strategy on the first election was just hide.
Yeah,
she
pulled that right out of the Biden playbook, man.
She was nowhere, going to the basement. She went into the basement, and that ended up, working in her favor. She's Arizona, is a third Republican, third Independent, third Democrat. So to win these statewide elections, you got to win over all the Republicans, win over half the independents plus one. Mm-hmm. And, that's how you win these elections. And, of course, the media, I shouldn't say of course, but it's just a matter of fact, the media has a bias against Republicans and conservatives. And so you have that middle, those independents that decide these elections. And I think, the media is just brutal on conservatives and Republicans, and they sway that group.
Well, somehow even now, you get the sense that even though there's people throwing bricks, and bricks all of a sudden just show up on pallets, and then they're throwing bricks through police car windows, they're still trying to paint this as like a peaceful protest, and it's a problem. We're taking out people who shouldn't be deported, and it's like they're not really. Behind them, things are burning, yet they're trying to focus on this little thing like, well, this one person accidentally got, deported. And it's like you would think that a rational person would go, when you're trying to deport, however many million people, I mean, we had 20 million people just come in the country. When you're trying to deport those people, which is what President Trump campaigned on and promised, you're going to make some mistakes. So it's like, okay, there's going to be some mistakes. We'll fix those mistakes. There's no way you're going to get everything perfect. But it just seems like those little teeny instances of a wrong deportation, that's what they blow up in your face. And like, this is wrong. These people.
Totally.
Yeah.
So
you mean you don't have a pallet of 8816s in your garage?
Oh, I do actually. Yeah,
right with the forklift just in case.
Well, I think you guys probably saw that sledgehammers and they're breaking sidewalk, and they would take chunks from the sidewalk and throw, resort to that. But no, the media is awful. It's great now that we have more sources of media, and social media is actually kind of just shown how the media is totally gaslighting us on so many different things. But everything is like that. I mean, law enforcement's like that. The military's like that. You have friendly fire. People, sometimes we shoot our own guys. But the media, what's the media going to do with that? Is if all they reported on is we shoot our own guys and not the victories and not everything else. I mean, that's kind of exactly what you're talking about is happening here with, the deportations. But it's amazing. You don't see this ever, but Trump's approval ratings are going up.
I heard. Yeah.
They're going up because he's actually doing something that politicians don't do. He's doing what he said
he was going to do.
One of the arguments that I've heard, speaking of on the National Guard and the military topic, and I would imagine being in the House and the Senate for a while, you know the laws on that pretty well. They're saying that, well, this is unconstitutional because the National Guard answers to the governor. And you can't bring in the military to police U.S. citizens. That's what I'm hearing from people that lean left. My take on it is, at a certain point, the federal government does have a responsibility to protect people, federal buildings, federal officers. That is their responsibility. So at this point, they do have the constitutional right to protect citizens, federal buildings, property, and I believe, I could be mistaken, but I believe the president's probably Trump. Any governors, the National Guard is my responsibility. Yeah, well, you failed to do it, and I have the responsibility to protect the people, so I'm going to do it. Do you have any insight
100%. Yeah, no, he's going to absolutely win this, and there's no question whatsoever that he can protect ICE. I mean, there's no question whatsoever he can send in the military to protect ICE agents as they're carrying out their operations. So, no, and in fact, until recently, if you go back all the way to early, the very first, court rulings in America, you will find almost no situations where the Supreme Court rules against the president when he is doing something related to national security. They always side with him because he is the commander in chief. And that is his primary one of his primary responsibilities is to keep America safe. So when it comes to that, I will be shocked. This lawsuit that California is doing, Trump's going to absolutely win this thing.
It's probably just optics and politics for Newsom, so he can put something out there so he doesn't look like an idiot, because he failed to bring in the National Guard and protect the people.
Yeah, absolutely. It is definitely optics. It is mind-boggling that they continue to try to appease this just small faction of their base that's very radical. And it's like an 80-20 issue. This is the least popular the Democrats have ever been. This is the first time in Rasmussen polling history that people who have been polled have said, Americans are saying America is on the right track. First time ever in polling history. And yet Newsom doubles down on this. Governor Hobbs signs a letter in support of Newsom against President Trump's actions to bring in the military and call up the National Guard, and it's insane. Instead of fighting against them, their focus should be on public safety. Their focus has been on obstructing Trump, which I think the public sees that, and it's hurting. I mean, you can just see it in their polling numbers.
It's a terrible time to play politics. When lives are like we saw this in Portland. We saw this in Seattle.
Yeah, this isn't the first time.
This is the same. Yeah, this is the same issue. This is the same. And then Trump sent in federal agents, and people were pissed. And it was like, well, once that happened, things started to quiet down. They're literally firebombing police stations with people inside of them.
Yeah,
still, and that was still labeled a peaceful protest. This is like the absolute worst time to be playing politics. And I just don't believe that anybody in their right mind thinks that. Well, this is a humanity issue. It's not anymore. Maybe it started that way, but it's not anymore. Now you're just playing politics, and people are losing property. Like business owners are losing everything.
Yeah,
I just you see the protesters or whatever, agitators, whatever you want to call them now, rioters. They're mostly young kids. It's pretty clear that a lot of it's being paid for and organized. Why does anybody take them seriously? I'm a 45-year-old guy, got kids, I have a job, all this stuff, right? Like, why would I listen to a 20-year-old kid who's out in the middle of the day, right, throwing bricks? I mean, so who are they trying to impress here?
Yeah, I think what they were hoping for, because they always have a sympathetic media against Trump, they were hoping for the narrative that Trump is making America unsafe. He is stoking violence. And to run with that, even though it's the opposite. And I think that was their angle, and that's the way they hoped to go. But it's a great point. I don't know who. For me, it does the opposite. It just validates that, he's doing the right thing. Democrats have the wrong policy. Democrat states have higher crime, higher problems. This is why Republicans have advantage in any kind of, like the AG race. I have an advantage just by virtue of people trust Republicans more with public safety.
Yeah.
We handle it better.
Yeah.
We're not, in general, we're tough on crime.
There is a fine line between, protecting the people and going too far. And that's something that we always have to be careful of. Trump's already been compared to Hitler again, right? Because he's calling in the National Guard and troops. But there's a fine line there, and you had mentioned the Marine Corps coming in to support. Do you think that was the right call?
I do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I mean, you would like it to be, you'd like it to be local law enforcement, of course. But when you're in a situation where you have national assets that are being attacked and at risk, I think it's totally appropriate.
Yeah. What would be the Attorney General's role? Let's say that these riots were here in Arizona and you had won the election.
Let's say with Katie Hobbs, when?
Yeah.
Let's just say when.
Yeah, exactly. Prosecution.
Yeah.
You'd be focused on prosecution and coming out, be coming out very strong, very firm. I always believe, prevention is better than prosecution.
Yeah.
And so first sending a very strong message to the state and the public, if you riot, we will absolutely prosecute you. I was down at the border just a couple of weeks ago with 11 AGs from around the country, and one of the AGs asked Border Patrol, why is there nobody here? What border crossings have dropped from 1,400 a day to 4 per day in the UMS sector? One guy he'd been there many times. He said, "This is the first time I've been here. I haven't seen someone crossing." And the Border Patrol answered the question, said the reason why there are no crossings is because, first of all, Trump ended catch and release, and number two, they prosecute everything. Like, if there's a law in the books and it's being broken, we prosecute it. It used to be the Biden administration basically said don't prosecute they wouldn't prosecute anything. But even the prior administrations that were tougher, they would let some things, it's not a big enough deal, we're not going to prosecute, even though somebody got arrested for that crime. He said now they are prosecuting everything. And criminals talk. I mean, people talk.
For sure.
And it just shuts down. So for me, that would be my first big thing. I would tell Arizona, we are going to prosecute every single thing on rioting. And so you're free to, of course, we want you to use your First Amendment right to protest, and you're able to do that peacefully.
Yeah. Exactly.
Protest to me means peaceful. But if you cross the line, criminal damage, violence, you will be prosecuted.
Now, how much is let's say the border issue, immigration, illegal immigration, how much does that fall on the state and how much does that fall on federal?
Well, it's primarily, when it comes to immigration, it's primarily it's the federal government that's responsible for the immigration process, naturalizing people to the United States, and even the border wall itself. However, each state should be able to defend itself. Each state, that's part of our sovereignty, our sovereign rights as a state is to be able to defend and protect ourselves. Just like you have the president who's the commander in chief, you've got a governor who is the same thing as the commander in chief for his state, right? So in Arizona, we actually passed something called the Border Security Act, and it essentially said Biden's not doing his job. We are going to enforce federal immigration law, local law enforcement, and it empowered local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law. Now, it's in court right now, but I believe if you have a good Supreme Court that believes in state sovereignty, its ability to protect itself, they rule that we can do that. But it is the federal government's responsibility to secure our border. But if they don't, then the states should have every right to step up and
that's like one of their primary responsibilities. From way back in the founding fathers, that was like why you need a federal government, protect the border, like that. That's like
Abbott overrode Biden, probably way too late from my standpoint, but he overrode Biden because Biden wouldn't secure the border. That was a big national. It made national news. I don't know what we did here. But
we did the same thing.
Okay.
So that's the Border Security Act. It basically mirrors Texas law. Texas is enjoined. It's being litigated, and the outcome of that will affect whether our law gets implemented or not.
So what's the motivation behind a president like Joe Biden letting in 20 million people?
Congressional power. It's all about congressional power. At least this is the logical conclusion is congressional power. These numbers are used for census counts. These census counts are used to allocate seats, and nobody has more seats than California. They offer the most seats, and extremely blue state. So you remove, what did they say? I think the latest I heard was 2 million illegal immigrants currently in, and I think what is it now? I want to say it's like 700,000 per. I mean, that's 3 congressional seats.
Right. So this is like a little sneaky thing that nobody talks about, but basically the census, right, determines how many congressional seats you have, and illegals have been counted in that census. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's like this little sneaky way of getting more electoral power.
Yeah, which
Electoral.
translates to 2 things: congressional seats, but also electoral votes.
Yes.
So it determines the balance of power in Congress. It also determines your presidency. There's nothing more powerful than those.
And let's be real. I mean, they're voting too. Like,
There was a lot of talk about
Yeah.
I listened to a number of podcasts about how there was law that it would enable illegal immigrants to vote. And
in
I know
Washington, D.C. and in California.
those are statewide, but I remember some national amendment, Article 15 or something. It's coming to my head, but there was a lot of talk about that. And now California, like you said, like they don't even look at your ID. It was illegal to look at your ID, so that's just something totally
crazy.
different.
That's absolutely insane to me.
It's insane. But in Arizona here, do we have any of that issue with illegals voting?
We have pretty good laws on it is illegal for non-citizens to vote. We passed a law to make it even harder for non-citizens to vote. Our current AG did not defend that law. Mi Familia, if you've heard of them, they're an activist group. They sued. Hobbs or Mays did not defend the law. As Senate President, I have standing, so I defended the law. In fact, I'm currently in over 70 lawsuits. So, and I could talk about a few of those, and it's part of the reason why I've been recruited to run. But so I am fighting. That's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court. It's back down to the Ninth Circuit en banc. We have this interesting thing, and we need to get this fixed, and I believe we will under the current Trump administration. But we have in Arizona, we have something called the federal only ballot. So we were able to determine that, we can do stricter standards on the statewide races, but when it came to the federal races, there have been court cases and laws that have said that we can only go so far proving their citizenship. So we can go further statewide. So what we ended up doing is we split our ballot. So the people who meet this threshold of proving citizenship, they get a state-only ballot. The people who don't prove that threshold, they get what's called a federal-only ballot. So if a few elections ago, we had 35,000 people on a federal-only ballot. So these are people voting that had a very low proof, very little proof of being citizens. So a real possibility that many of those are
How does that even,
citizens.
You mentioned all the lawsuits, how does that even make it through the court system where, that's like, you have to be a citizen to vote, period, end of discussion. And when they get that into the court system,
well, here's how it works. Congress needs to pass stricter, and they have something, I think it's called the SAFE Act. They need to pass stricter voter ID laws, stricter laws to make sure only citizens are voting. That hasn't happened. And so when somebody sues and says, oh, Arizona, you're making it stricter than what the federal government has allowed, then a judge says, oh, no, they don't need to show their ID. All they need to show is a power bill. And so that's how it happens. A bad court ruling based off of current law. And so that is why Congress right now, and again, 90%, I'm pretty sure it's called the SAFE Act, if I'm not mistaken. They're trying to make sure only citizens are voting. So
I have to show my ID. I'm a 45-year-old balding man. I have to show my ID to go buy a beer.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you can vote.
It's a nice compliment for you. You're so young looking.
All right. Well, what else? I know you had sent me a list of things that you wanted to talk about. Border was one of them. You had a trip down to the border.
Yeah.
What are some other things going on besides immigration and these riots that are going on that you'd like to talk about?
Well, one thing I like to share with people, so I'll share this because you just can't believe it without seeing it with your own eyes. And I would encourage anybody to go to the border if you haven't been. Go down there. You can. Anyways, I can help you guys kind of set up a tour or whatever. But you'll hear these stories, but until you kind of witness it firsthand, it's not as real. And I had heard Biden had open borders and Biden was doing things to actually make it easier. And you hear it and you say, okay, well, I literally witnessed it firsthand. They were touring us around and they would show us this pole, and they said these poles all used to have cameras on them. The Biden administration ordered them to come down. So not only did they say, like, turn them off, they literally removed the cameras. There was wiring that was in the ground. I think it was used for sensor, like detecting people crossing. They dug it up and removed it. There were materials wall materials just laying on the ground. And they said they were told not to continue any construction, and not only that, to sell off the material for like 3 cents on the dollar. So I've heard some of these, but I got to tell you, when you go there and see it with your own eyes, it will incense you. You just can't even believe how treacherous this prior administration was. It's mind blowing.
It is interesting to just see the trajectory of Democrats, even just over the last 10 years. And if you go back to Clinton, even Obama, Hillary, there's plenty of them talking about how they want a secure border and this isn't a free ride. There's plenty of sound bites out there.
Yeah.
And something changed. You saw when Hillary ran against Trump in 2016, she started to go far left. She was always a centrist, and same with Biden. They were always pretty center. But they have allowed a far left agenda to really hijack that party. And I wonder what they're getting out of it, I guess is the question. Do they think that what they're doing is just going to secure the party for a longer amount of time? Because it seems to me, like you said, it's 80-20. Like, there's a lot of craziness on the news, but most people do not want an extra 20 million people on the docket, paying for them, paying for their healthcare, paying for their phones. Yeah, we care about people, but you know what? You have your own country. Not only that, there's a
legal process.
There's
I have two people in my family that immigrated to this country legally. Mm-hmm. So follow the legal process. And, the people that are really breaking the laws, they're doing it for a reason. They can't get in legally because they've got records. They're smuggling drugs. They're smuggling people. But yeah, I mean, the only thing I've been able to come up with, there's really two things. They have a small faction that is very intense and very loud, and they are appeasing them. And then the other thing has been picking up congressional seats. So.
You think it comes back to them as individuals? I don't think there's any doubt that there's a lot of individual politicians getting rich being politicians. Do you think that's the ultimate driver, or do you think that they're like, you know what, I don't care about myself too much as long as our party is in a good place long term? Hard for me to, I would say just on that, it'd be hard for me to believe that it's not self-motivated. Yeah,
I mean, you shouldn't be able to become rich becoming a politician because you can only take donations. So unless they're, getting paid on the side, I mean, that's against the law. They shouldn't be doing that. I think it's more of the other. I mean, at least at the legislature, I can tell you people are really passionate. They're well-intentioned. They think what they're doing is right. But when it gets down to the people that are, the strategy, when you get down to the strategy level, it's what we talked about. So.
You'd mentioned water.
Yeah.
How's our water situation?
It's interesting because we actually have businesses that move here for the water.
Yeah.
So, our current governor has, made it sound like we're out of water. And the facts are, for housing and for businesses, we actually have plenty of water to continue to grow, to continue to have more businesses, have more housing. The area where it does get, where there is some rationing that needs to be done is when you start getting into the agricultural. That's where there's an effect. Because if you look at a pie for water, 80% of water is used for agriculture. 17% is housing and and then you've got a little sliver for businesses, industrial. So the reality is, and this is part of the laws and so forth, is when there's cuts, it's agricultural who takes the hit. So this fear mongering, like with houses and businesses, that's actually inaccurate. And that's not really where the water savings is. The water savings is with the agricultural community. So we are currently renegotiating. There's 7 states that share the Colorado River, and we are in renegotiations right now. Arizona, I've been somewhat involved with this, and we've got to make sure that we get a good deal, because the Colorado River provides basically all the water to the west side of the state, and even all the way down to southern Arizona. So we're in the middle of that right now. Thank goodness Trump won. If Trump would not have won, I think we would have gotten a really bad deal. I feel like I met with the Department of Interior and Doug Burgum's staff, and I feel like we're negotiating right now, but I feel like we're going to get a fair deal. I mean, that's really all we can ask for, is to get a fair deal. But Arizona has been the gold standard on conservation. We're using the same amount of water with 7.5 million people that we used when we had 1.5.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So it just shows.
It's all the rocks in the front yards now. They don't let us have grass anymore.
It's funny. I had a friend come visit me, hadn't been to the desert before. He's like, I really like how you guys have rocks in your yard. He's like, I've never seen that before. Like, you guys put rocks in your yard. Yeah. He was fascinated by the rocks.
Yeah. So I just saw something pop up too. Hobbs vetoed a bill. I don't know if she vetoed. I think she vetoed it. Where the bill was not allowing China to own property here in Arizona.
Yeah.
And she vetoed that.
She's actually vetoed 5 of those bills.
Oh, wow.
Here's what's interesting. When she vetoed it, I put out a release, or I should say I posted, and I said that the Senate is going to override her veto. We're going to put it up for an override. And then it got, national attention, and she was really feeling the heat. Again, an 80-20 issue, right? Where most people agree with us on this. So then she comes out and says, oh, I vetoed it because it was too weak. I want you to be stronger on China. Well, she's vetoed 5 bills that have dealt with this.
Yeah.
Again, appeasing to a base, like, oh, you're going after minorities. No, we're going after a country that is on the dangerous list for our national security. So suddenly she now wants to get tough, which is great. We'll put a bill on her desk that's tougher. But it was interesting to watch her backpedal on that.
She just seems like she's in way over her head.
You just look at her and go, she's in over her head. Did that bill have something to do with specifically with property near military bases too?
Yeah. So the key was to this one. Again, we've had, and I get some of them confused because we've had about 5 of them. Some have been outright ban on China owning any property. This one, from what I remember, it was around military installations. So anyways, we'll see. She's now saying she'll sign something tougher. So we'll always, Republicans will always be on board with that.
Well, if America wanted to go buy land anywhere in China, or specifically near a Chinese military base, what would happen?
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, I think you get awards in China for stealing intellectual property.
Yeah.
Like the government.
So it's like all of a sudden, like all of these other countries have stuff like this in place where you can't just as America go, you know what, we're going to buy this land. What for? Don't worry about it. We're just going to buy it.
Yeah, we're so lenient.
And like everybody shuts this down, but all of a sudden everybody else thinks it's a crime when America does. Oh my God, you guys can't.
Yeah. And you'll often have, the left will say that, try to act like people from outside our country have the same rights our citizens have. Well, why become a citizen?
Yeah.
What's
the point?
Why are you a citizen if you don't even have more rights? And
use that argument about like the First Amendment.
Yeah.
It says that a person has the right to, and I go, understand in the context, person doesn't mean non-citizen. Person means a citizen.
Yeah. We just did a podcast and we were talking about every single piece of legislation has its own definitions, and they can mean something different from each piece of legislation. It's crazy. So you actually really have to dig in to understand what that really means. So
It's because basically it's the right of the people.
yeah.
People meaning us, U.S. citizens, not like, oh, Chinese foreign nationals. They're a people. They have this. No, you don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 100%. I am a firm believer that the citizens have more rights than non-citizens.
I would just like for our politicians to put the American people first, like truly first. And I do feel like that's what Trump is trying to do. Listen, I think we should care for everybody on an individual basis. Like, I think human life is important and it's the most valuable thing we have, but we also need our laws, and we can't just allow everybody in, because as the United States, the most powerful, wealthy country in the world has ever known, will end up like Mexico if we do that. There's no way we can support this. I mean, you look at our national debt, it's crazy. We cannot support that. So we need to get back to taking care of the people that are here, making sure that limit immigration so that we can take care of the people that are here. I think that's what I think.
100%. Yeah, no, and we really need I wish the founders would have put in a balanced budget amendment.
I know, right?
We have a $2 trillion deficit. You know, even California, New York, these crazy liberal states that just tax like crazy and have out of control spending, they have to balance their budgets. And what that does is it forces them to be more fiscally sound, even though they're not, and they take it to the limit, and they're continually raising taxes. And but Congress has two jobs. It would be so simple to be a congressman over being a legislator, because legislators, we're in charge of all the laws for the state, but Congress should really just balance the budget and then devolve all power to the states. I mean, that's really all a congressman, and they're not doing either of those things at all.
I know you're short on time, but I want to get at least one. You mentioned the budget, and we have this big, beautiful bill. I would say there's some divide between whether it's good for the country on the Republican Party. Obviously, the Democrats don't like it because they don't like anything Trump does.
Yeah.
But there is talk, and I've heard a lot of fiscally conservative people, Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, talk about they're not going to vote for it because it does not go far enough on reducing the budget or reducing the deficit over the 10 years. I think it's $800 billion over 10 years, which is nothing. You know, $150 billion a year, I think, is what it was, if I'm not mistaken, or 800. I don't know, something like that.
The annual deficit is to pay it off. Yeah, it was like 10 years to cut the deficit.
What do you think about the bill?
Here's what I think. This is one part of the process, and Republicans are terrible at this. This is something I focus on, and I think it's the reason I've been able to get a lot done. I mean, I've passed hundreds of bills that have gotten stuff done. For me, it's always, we need to work on incrementalism. Is it moving us in the right direction, or is it moving us in the wrong direction? Well, if we're protecting the tax cuts, they're getting rid of Medicaid for illegals. They had all these good things in there. Well, the status quo has been deficit spending.
Yeah.
But this other stuff has not been the status quo. This is progress. So to me, it feels like you're making progress. This is phase one. You have the next day you can put up a bill to balance the budget. In 8 months, you can put up something to balance the budget. I don't know if they don't get it in now. I don't know if they eliminate Medicaid for people not here in the country legally. I don't know if the tax cuts get renewed. You know, the tax cut, all of our taxes may double because they don't do it. So I think it's taking us in the right direction. I think our debt is the hugest threat we have, but just the fact that all the Democrats voted no, and we only have a couple of Republicans having issues with me, that tells me right there we should push this through, and then there should just be a focus on, okay, let's balance the budget.
I do feel that, I've thought about this a lot after, Trump came in, and I've always been the type of guy who's like, you want to vote and think about the ideas. But really what you end up doing, I think, is you have to get behind the man or the woman who becomes president. And even though you don't agree with everything that's going on, you still have to support that person because they are taking you in the right direction, which is basically what you're saying right here. It's like, okay, it's not everything we want, but it's in the right direction. So I can sympathize with a lot of the people. There's been a couple bills that not all the Republicans have specifically Massey and Rand Paul, have not agreed with because it hasn't gone far enough. But they've gone in the right direction. And a lot of people that I respect have said that, yeah, this is actually a good bill. It takes us in the right direction. It's not everything we want right now, but it's going in the right direction. So, I mean, I do see sense in that. It's hard because I look at that and I look at the big, beautiful bill. I'm like, why don't you cut more? Why don't we get to pre-pandemic spending? But we're not. How can we be 4 years outside of, COVID-19 spending and not just go, why don't we just go back to pre-pandemic spending? But that's not
because you
happening.
have all of these interests that are now addicted to these higher funds, and they've got their claws into a lot of politicians. And what'll happen is, or this is what happens to the legislature, you have to find that consensus with all the Republicans. And Rand Paul and Massey should be smart enough to know where that is. They should be smart enough to know this is as far as we can take it.
Yeah.
Now, if they can take it farther to the right, well, then maybe they need to keep fighting. But once you hit all the way to the right, as far as you can go, that's when you get on the train and you vote it out. Because if they get off the train, now you need Democrat votes to pass it. Well, what are you going to get? It's going to go way left. So the best bill you can get is when all the Republicans are on it. It looks like all but 2 are on it. That sounds like we're there.
Yeah. How you doing on time?
I got to go.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks. I appreciate it. I think we ended up getting 40 minutes out of you instead of 30. So.
Yeah. Well, I got here a little early. So,
Yeah.
oh, shoot. It's one. I didn't realize it was 1:20.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate it. Thank you so
Hey.
much.